Hello students, myself Dr. Sucharita Bhattacharya from Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata is starting my lecture series on electromagnetic theory for the sixth lecture. And this lecture series you all know for Physics 2, and this is for third semester BTech course, and the streams under consideration is Computer Science and Engineering and Information Technology. Now, today we are going to start the submodule 4.02, which is on magnetostatics. The portions what we are going to cover today, not only today, but in magnetostatics are Lorentz force, the concept in Hall effect, force on a small current element placed in a magnetic field, Biot-Savart's law, the non-existence of magnetic monopole, Ampere's circuital law, magnetic vector, and the scalar potential. The total lectures to be delivered on magnetostatics is 3 lectures, and along with that I will take one extra lecture for your numerical solutions. Now for detailed books, you can take a look at our website www.gnit.ac.in syllabus. Now, the course objective of this electromagnetic theory, I am giving you a reminder for that electromagnetic theory will provide exposure to the foundations of electrostatics, magnetostatics, electromagnetic inductions, which ultimately helps to reach Maxwell's field equations, thus highlighting the nature of electromagnetic waves, including their polarization property. This knowledge is applied in communication and networking. Now, the course outcome is, after completion of this course, you students will be able to understand and explain the phenomena of electrostatics, magnetostatics, and electromagnetic theory. You can apply the knowledge of electromagnetic theory in communication networking. You can analyze the change in electric and magnetic fields in various systems. Now, today's lesson plan, the first lecture on magnetostatics. It will cover the introduction, Lorentz force, concept in Hall effect, force on a small current element placed in a magnetic field. Now, the questions what we are going to address in this lesson are this. That is, what do you mean by magnetostatics? The first one. Next, what is magnetostatic force? Then, how to define magnetic field vector? Next is, what is Lorentz force? Then, how to calculate force on a small current element placed in a magnetic field? Next, what is Hall effect? Then we will discuss the conceptualization of Hall effect in conductor and semiconductor. Then we will explain the expression of Hall voltage and the Hall coefficient. Then we will go for few applications of the Hall effect. Now to start with, what about magnetostatics? Basically, magnetic effect of steady current is called magnetostatics, and it is termed as that it is magnetic analog of electrostatics. You are all familiar with electrostatics. Magnetostatics is called magnetic analog of electrostatics, where we have seen that charges are at rest. And the expression for electrostatic force, what we got in the earlier classes, is F equal to Q into E, where F is the electrostatic force, E is the electric field. If Q is positive, then F is parallel to E. But if Q moves with velocity V, because it is the steady current case, then an additional magnetostatic force arises, which is expressed as Fm equal to Q V cross B, where V is the magnetic field vector or induction vector, and Fm and V is the velocity of the charge Q, and Fm obviously is perpendicular to the plane containing V and V. So here magnetostatic force is perpendicular to the plane containing V and V. In case of electrostatic force, we found that electrostatic force is parallel to electric field. So here from this point onwards, we will start comparing the electrostatics and magnetostatics wherever it is applicable. Okay. Now let us come to the direction exactly. That what do we mean by Fm is perpendicular to V and B. For Q to be positive, it is found that the direction is given by right-handed corkscrew or right-handed rule. Now, what about this right-handed corkscrew or right-handed rule? Let us visualize it. Now, if we consider that V, the velocity vector, is represented along this line, and the B, magnetic field vector, is represented along this line with an angle theta between them, then V cross B will be given perpendicular to the plane containing V and B. Now, if you use your right hand and your four fingers, if you move from V to B, your four fingers, if you move from V to B, that means you just curl them. Then what about the direction of V cross B? It will be along the thumb of your right hand. So the direction of the magnetostatic force, it will be along the thumb of your right hand. If your right hand four fingers are moved from V to B, the first four fingers are moved from V to B, then that means curling towards from V towards B, then the direction of V cross B will be along the thumb of this right hand. In terms of the right-handed corkscrew, it will be in the direction of advancement of the tip of a right-handed corkscrew, where B is represented by this vector and B is represented by this vector, provided Q is positive. If Q is negative, then obviously Fm will be opposite. Now, the magnitude of Fm is QVB sine theta, where theta is the angle represented here. So, the V pointing perpendicular to V and B, it is Fm pointing perpendicular to V and B is represented by right-handed corkscrew rule or right-handed rule, which is definitely different compared to the relationship between Fe and E. Let us now come to another point of comparison. If Fm is perpendicular to V, then obviously the work done by Fm on Q as it moves through a distance V dt in a time dt is given by Fm dot V dt, and that will be 0. Because you considered that Fm is perpendicular to V as per the expression for magnetostatic force. So what about the corresponding work done? Force into displacement. Now what about displacement? A charge q moving with a velocity v for a time dt is given by the displacement v dt. So what about the work done? Fm dot v dt. As Fm is perpendicular to v, so this dot product gives us 0 according to the rule of vector calculus. That means Fm alone cannot work on q. This is very, very important, that Fm alone cannot work on q. But Fe is independent of velocity and it can work on the charge. So there is again a significant distinction between the Fm and the Fe. Let us move to the next part. Now we will define the magnetic field and then the Lorentz force to enter into the electrodynamics. What about that? So we have been familiar with the magnetostatic force Fm equal to QV cross B. So we will define B here as limit of QV tends to 0 Fm cross B cap by QV from this expression. How to get it? If a charge Q moving with a velocity V in a direction perpendicular to B moves, then the force if it encounters is Fm, then B is expressed like this. I am repeating, if a charge Q moves with a velocity V in a direction perpendicular to B, encounters a force Fm, then V is expressed as limit of QV tends to 0, Fm cross V cap by QV, where V cap is a unit vector along the direction of velocity. How we are getting it? That is, Q is moving with velocity V in a direction perpendicular to B. That means VB sine 90. Now sine 90 equal to 1. So magnitude wise, we are getting QVB equal to Fm. So what about B? Fm by QV. Now, since V is a vector, so how to realize it? Fm cross B cap, the unit vector along V divided by QV in the limit QV tends to 0. Now, the limit QV tends to 0 signifies that moving particles should not perturb the magnetic field, just as we encountered in electrostatics that Q tends to 0. Where Q tends to 0 means point charge we have taken for test charge so that it should not perturb the electric field produced by the test charge for source charges. Similarly, here QV tends to 0 signifies that moving particles should not perturb the magnetic field. Now, the magnetic field B is expressed in Weber per meter square or Tesla in SI system of unit. If both electric field and magnetic field are present, then the total force acting on a point charge Q is expressed as F equal to Fe plus Fm, that is QE plus QV cross B, which is known as the Lorentz force, which represent the behavior of the charged particle in electromagnetic field. This is nothing but the subject matter of electrodynamics. This is nothing but the subject matter of electrodynamics. So, Lorentz force is nothing but the sum of electrostatic force and the magnetostatic force and represents the behavior of the charged particle in electromagnetic field, and that is nothing but the subject matter of electrodynamics. Now, let us take a look at the direction of the Lorentz force because it is also a vector. Now, if plus Q is the positive point charge, and if this is the direction of the electric field working, then the direction of the electrostatic force QE will be along the direction of FE. In case of the magnetostatic force, if this is the direction of velocity of the charged particle Q moving with velocity V, then if this is the direction of the magnetic field B, including angle theta between them, then according to the magnetostatic force, it will be the direction of QV cross B. That is the magnetostatic force perpendicular to the plane containing V and B. Now, this is electrostatic force, this is magnetostatic force. So, obviously, according to the parallelogram law of addition of the vectors, we will get the direction of F. That is the Lorentz force will be along this. So, this is Fe, this is Fm. So, following the parallelogram law of vectors, F is representing the direction of the Lorentz force. So, I think all of you understand. Let us now move to the next point, that is force on a current carrying conductor. Already we have seen that moving charges experience a force in a magnetic field. Now, if these moving charges are in a conductor, it should also experience the force. As charge experience the force in a magnetic field, so charge if inside a conductor, it should also experience, that is the conductor should experience a force. Let us now take a look. To calculate this force, let us consider an infinitesimal section of a current carrying conductor, the so-called current element represented by dl, with length dl and cross-sectional area A carrying a current, say I. So we are considering a current element dl whose length is dl and cross-sectional area A carrying a current I inside a current carrying conductor. Let N be the number of charge carriers per unit volume in the conductor. N be the number of charge carriers per unit volume in the conductor. So, the total number of charge carriers inside the element will be NaDl. This is the current carrying conductor we are talking about. Dl is a small element of length through which current I is moving. So if N is the total number of charge carriers per unit volume within the conductor, then the total number of charge carriers inside the element GL will obviously will be Na into GL, because N is the number of charge carrier per unit volume, A is the cross sectional area, and GL is the length. Now, if the charge carriers move with drift velocity V, then V will be parallel to GL, because DL is parallel to I. DL is parallel to I, naturally DL will be parallel to V. V is the velocity, that is the drift velocity of the charge carrier Q, and since it is the direction of the current, so DL must be parallel to V. Now, each of the charge carrier experience a force QV cross B according to magnetostatics. So, the total magnetic force on all the charge carrier will obviously be dF equal to NAdL into QV cross B. This is the force experienced on a single charge carrier. So, total number of charge carrier within the element is NAdL. So the total force experienced on all the charge carrier obviously will be NAdL QV cross B. Now, this is the force acting on the conductor itself. This is also the force acting on the conductor itself, because charge carriers remain bound inside the conductor, so they cannot come out. So this is also the force acting on the conductor itself. Now, we have found that DL is parallel to V. Already we have found DL is parallel to V. So from this expression, we can write GF is equal to NA QV. That means we are interchanging the position of DL and V, because DL is parallel to V. So NA QV into DL cross V. So interchanging the position of V and DL, we are getting NA QV DL cross V, as DL is parallel to V. That is equal to I, the current, into DL cross B, because I equal to NA into QV. Because I equal to, the current equal to NA into QV. So DF, the force on the conductor itself, we are getting as I DL cross B for a small current element DL placed in a magnetic field V. For finite length of the conductor, the force F exerted on it will be obviously I integration dl cross B. I integration dl cross B for a finite length of the conduction. Now, the direction of this force is how to get. Just take a look. The direction of this force is pointed by the thumb. If fingers are in the direction of the current to curl them towards the field, it is also another right hand rule. It is represented in terms of the parameters or the variables which are used here. In terms of the variable switcher or the parameters what we have taken here, in terms of that it is represented. The direction of this force is pointed by the thumb. If the fingers are in the direction of the current, to curl them towards the field. Okay, so this is representing the direction of force. If B is uniform, then F equal to I. This DL we will consider separately inside the integration, and we can take B out because B is uniform. Then F is written like this. In that case, the force on a straight current carrying wire in a uniform magnetic field obviously will be F is equal to I L cross B. If it is a straight wire, we consider the conductor is a straight wire, then integration dl will be equal to L. So F will be equal to I dl cross B. That means the Lorentz force expression we got previously, now we are getting here the expression for force on a current carrying conductor, that is given as I dl cross B, and the direction is given by right-handed rule, where it represents that if the force is pointed by the thumb, force will be pointed by the thumb if fingers are in the direction of the current to curl them towards the field. And for a straight wire, the expression is given by F is equal to I L cross B. Now, let us move to the all-important Hall effect. This Hall effect, it was given by Edwin Hall in the year 1879. In the year 1879. Now, when a magnetic field is applied to a current-carrying conductor or semiconductor in a direction perpendicular to that of the flow of current, a potential difference or transverse electric field is found to be developed across the conductor or the semiconductor according to Hall. It is called the Hall effect. So I am repeating, when a magnetic field is applied to a current carrying conductor or semiconductor, it is applied for both in a direction perpendicular to that of the flow of current, a potential difference is developed across the conductor or the semiconductor. It was found by Hall. So this is called Hall effect. Why it is appearing? Actually, current consists of, we all know, that large number of charge carriers which are moving, which always try to flow in a straight path. The moving charge carrier forming the current always try to move in a straight path provided no other forces are present. Now, at this point, we must consider one thing, that during the movement of the charge carrier, they collide with the large number of positively charged heavy ions. And at the time of the collisions, definitely their path changes a little bit from the straight line. Okay. But if the applied voltage is very high, then this applied voltage can help to overcome this opposition force due to the collision which deviates from the straight path. That's why more or less, if no other forces are present, for a standard potential difference or the applied voltage, we used to get the path as a straight path for moving charge carrier. But when a magnetic field is applied perpendicularly, when a magnetic field is applied perpendicularly, the path of the charge carrier between collisions no longer remains straight. The magnetic field exerts a transverse force on the moving charge carrier, which tends to push them to one side of the conductor, naturally leaving equal and opposite charges on the other side. Now just take a look at this diagram. This is we are considering a conductor. So inside this conductor, this is the direction of the magnetic field, which is applied perpendicular to the direction of the current, conventional current. Naturally, what will happen? The conductor, if we consider large number of free charge carrier, means mostly the electrons. So because of this force, the electrons will move towards it, and naturally the positive charges will move the other way. So there is a potential difference created between this phase to that phase, and that potential difference or the voltage is called the Hall voltage. So between collisions, if there is no longer remain straight when the magnetic field is applied, and magnetic field exerts a transverse force on the moving charge carrier, which tends to push them apart on one side, and the other side will be devoid of that charge. Now, if electrons move that side, then this side will be the deficit of electrons will have. That means it is equivalent to positive charges. Naturally, separation of the charge carrier produces the electric field which opposes the further migration of the charges. That means a steady electric potential or voltage is developed so long as the charge is flowing, and this is called the Hall voltage. That means current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field perpendicular to it, and the voltage what is developed, that is called the Hall voltage. Now, this is the expression for the Hall voltage. That is VH equal to IB divided by QN into D. Now here VH is the Hall voltage, I is the current, B is the magnetic field. This is I, B is the magnetic field. and Q is the charge of each carrier, N is the number of charge carrier per unit volume. That means carrier concentration. And D is the thickness of this conductor. D is the thickness of the conductor, or you may call the semiconductor also. That means in order to produce a large Hall voltage, we need to use a thin material with few mobile charges per unit volume. In order to produce a large Hall voltage, we need to use a thin material with few mobile charges per unit volume. Now, let us come to the case of Hall effect in semiconductors, the special point. Basically, the way Hall effect for conductors develop, in the same way it is also developed for the semiconductor. So, when a current carrying semiconductor is placed in a magnetic field, the charge carriers of the semiconductor experience a force in a direction perpendicular to both the magnetic field and the current. At equilibrium, a voltage naturally appears at the semiconductor edges. So everything remaining same, but only the point is that in case of semiconductor, we know that there are two types of charge carrier present. One is the electron and the other is the hole. Now, before going to that point, let us just take a look at the expression for the Hall coefficient, which will be valid equally for both conductor as well as for semiconductor. Now, quantitative measures of Hall effect is expressed by Hall coefficient. That means how much Hall effect is produced in a conductor or semiconductor, it is expressed by Hall coefficient. The expression is RH equal to VHT by ID, where VH is the Hall voltage. The expression you have seen in the earlier slide. Now, VH into T is the thickness of that conductor or semiconductor. I is the current, V is the magnetic field. Actually, this expression of Hall coefficient you are going to determine in physics lab also. Okay. Now, this simple formula for Hall coefficient works well when conductor is dominated by a single charge carrier. But in semiconductors, already I mentioned, and you also know that the theory is much more complicated, because in semiconducting material, conduction can involve significant and simultaneous contributions from both electrons as well as holes. Both type of charge carriers are present in semiconductors. Electrons are negative charge carriers and hole the positive charge carriers, which may be present in different concentrations having different mobilities. Very, very important point. In case of conductor, only one type of charge carrier are present. That's why we considered that only the concentration that is in the form of N, say. But if in case of, you consider the case of here only one charge carrier concentration you considered. But when you are talking about the semiconductor, you have both electron as well as hole. So two type of charge carriers are present. So their different concentrations will be there and their mobilities may be different. Now, in case of N-type semiconductor, we all know the majority carriers are the electrons. So the electric field is primarily produced here due to the negatively charged free electrons. That means Hall voltage and the Hall field is primarily produced due to the negatively charged free electrons, which are the majority carrier. So the Hall voltage produced in N-type semiconductor is negative. Hall voltage produced in N-type semiconductor is negative. Be careful. In the P-type semiconductor, on the other hand, the electric field is primarily produced due to the positively charged holes. Because in P-type semiconductor, the majority carriers are the holes. So Hall voltage produced in the P-type semiconductor is positive. Hall voltage produced in P-type semiconductor is positive. That means If you want to differentiate between N-type and P-type semiconductors, apparently we can't distinguish them by looking at them. But if you use the Hall effect experiment, then Hall voltage produced in case of N-type semiconductor will come out as negative, and in case of P-type semiconductor, Hall voltage will come out as positive. That means by looking at their values, you can very easily identify that which one is positive P-type semiconductor, which one is N-type semiconductor. So this is very important applications of Hall effect in semiconductors. Now let us move to few other applications of the Hall effect. First, I already mentioned that Hall effect is used to find whether a semiconductor is N-type or P-type. Whether a semiconductor is N-type or P-type, we can very easily get it. Next is Hall effect is used to find carrier concentration, because already we have seen that N, the carrier concentration, is occurring in the expression for the Hall voltage. So definitely by measuring the Hall voltage with given other parameters, you can find out the carrier concentration. Next one is the Hall effect is also used to calculate the mobility of the charge carrier. Mobility means the drift velocity per unit electric field. So Hall effect is used to calculate the mobility of the charge carrier, both free electrons as well as holes. Because if we consider the semiconductor, then both type of charge carriers will be present. And few minutes back, we already discussed that it may create a problem so far as the Hall voltage measurement and Hall coefficient measurement is concerned, but at the same time it is advantageous because it is used to calculate the mobility of the charge carriers. Next is that Hall effect is used to measure the conductivity. Hall effect is used to measure the conductivity because you can measure the current also. You can measure the current also. So you can measure the conductivity by using the Hall effect experiment. Next, Hall effect is used to measure AC power. Hall effect is used to measure AC power and the strength of the magnetic field. Hall effect is used to measure the AC power and the strength of the magnetic field because B is also very much there. Hall effect is also used in an instrument called Hall effect multiplier. Hall effect is also used in an instrument known as the Hall effect multiplier, which gives the output proportional to the product of two input signals. Multiplier means the output proportional to the product of two input signals. So Hall effect is a very important application here, that it is used in Hall effect multiplier, which can give you the output proportional to the product of two input signals. Now come to the case of Hall probe, very important one. And after a few weeks or say 1.5 months, you will do this experiment in the physics lab, that is Hall effect experiment, to measure the Hall coefficient to identify whether a semiconductor is P-type or N-type. And there we are going to use this Hall probe. Now, Hall probe are often used as magnetometers. That means to measure the magnetic field or inspect the materials. Actually, Hall probes we are using in our lab basically as magnetometer. That means it intersects the magnetic field, and that magnetic field intersection is directly connected to the Gauss meter. From there we can directly measure the magnetic field, and you will also do that experiment in the physics lab. Or it can inspect the materials such as the tubing or the pipelines using the principles of magnetic flux linkage. Using the principles of magnetic flux linkage, it can inspect the materials such as tubing or the pipelines using this principle. So these are the different applications of the Hall effect. So I think all of you are understanding the different cases of the different portions of the magnetostatics which we are supposed to cover in our first lecture. Everything we have done. So first what we have done, first we have found out what about magnetostatics, then we consider the magnetostatic force, then we have considered the magnetic field expression. Then what about the Lorentz force that we have found out? In all cases, we have found out the corresponding directions using the right hand rule. Then we have gone for force on a current element that we found out, and that will be applied in our next class in very special cases that we will do, that force on a current carrying conductor or the element. Then after that, we have gone for the Hall effect. It's detailing. That means how the Hall effect is produced in a conductor, and what about the difference of the Hall effect in case of semiconductor. That means both N-type and P-type semiconductors are present. Then how to identify the N-type and P-type semiconductor using the Hall effect, and few other applications of the Hall effect. So I think when you will come to the physics lab, whatever discussion we have done today, it will help you to do the experiment using the Hall probe and P-type and N-type semiconductors. Okay. So in the next class, we will do the Biot-Savart's law and its different area. Clear? So till then, you stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you, my students.